How many Western Europeans still truly feel at home in their own countries? The answer might be shocking to you. I talk a lot about the problems of both Islam and political correctness, and you might already be aware of the danger that Islam represents to the West, why this is the case, and how Islam operates. Simultaneously, there is a process going on the other side, on the side of the native European population. In this video, I will explain you why this is the case and how this works. A very important term is the word oikos. The ancient Greek word oikos roughly refers to the own home environment. It can refer to a wide range of concepts, among which the family, the family's property, the house, and the overall public space. Throughout human history, people had an oikos that made them feel at home. In ancient Greece, the people were surrounded by their own home environment, so to speak, consisting of their own architecture, their own people, their own art, their own language, and their own style of clothing. Roughly speaking, their own culture in all its glory. As you can see, civilizations usually had a very distinct look and feel to them. The Chinese felt at home in China, the Romans felt at home in Rome, the Indians felt at home in India, and the Greeks felt at home in Greece. What was the case for ancient civilization also is the case for different nations that are actually a part of the same civilization. This is also the case within Western civilization. Every people has an oikos. The Germans used to live in a German oikos, surrounded by German architecture, food and music. The Scottish lived in the Scottish oikos, and the Italians used to live in an Italian oikos. Therefore, you can basically recognize a civilization or a state simply by looking at a picture of its overall public sphere. Well, today in 2017, recognizing a European country by the look of its public sphere has become incredibly difficult. For example, what country is this? It's London. What continent is this? This is Dewsbury in England. Where is this? Apparently this is the Netherlands. I couldn't even recognize it myself. So what does it do to people to see their oikos destroyed? In order to elaborate what this is like to many people in the Netherlands, I'd like to translate a part of an email I recently received. It scares me when I see how fast my city has changed. I've been worrying about this for quite some time, but what happened recently has changed the way I view the current situation. After a nice 2-week holiday in Prague with my wife and our little daughter, we arrived back in Eindhoven by plane, and we then took the train back to the city where we live. After having spent 2 weeks in Czech Republic, it felt good to come home. I was looking forward to it. However, immediately after having arrived at the train station of our city, this changed. Immediately after getting off the train, I saw 2 women wearing hijabs. Immediately after that, I saw a group of Africans who were loudly speaking in a foreign language. 10 seconds later, I saw a big Muslim family with a headscarved wife and several headscarved daughters. After leaving the train station, 2 men walked by, loudly speaking Turkish, while gesturing fanatically. And immediately after that, I again saw 2 headscarved women, each of them pushing a stroller with a baby, and another 5 children walking beside them. Within a minute after getting off the train, that nice feeling of coming home was quickly overwhelmed by this feeling of alienation and sadness. I found myself wanting to go back to Prague. I don't feel at home anymore in the city I've lived my entire life. So this is what ruining the oikos with alien symbolism does to people. People no longer feel at home in their own countries. The familiar sound of a church is increasingly disappearing from our societies. Whether you're a Christian yourself or an agnostic or atheist, the sound of the church nearby has been a familiar part of your oikos and one of the things that made you feel at home. Now, your oikos is being dominated by unfamiliar, non-Western elements. It makes no sense historically, culturally, or spiritually. Islamic headscarves, mosques, and even the sound of an Islamic call to prayer. Coincidentally and inconveniently, Islam is a public sphere ideology. It wants to be seen and heard as much as possible. It's what it's meant to do. Islam is designed to dominate and subjugate. And this makes sense because Islam is a totalitarian political ideology, just like other totalitarian political ideologies. These type of ideologies want to dominate the oikos. So whether they realize it or not, people living in these Western European countries are confused and demoralized. Their moral compasses are broken, and they do not know what values they should be acting on or defending. Aren't men and women equal in my country? Then why I am continuously confronted with symbolism that says otherwise? Is equality between men and women good or bad? Didn't we already go through the Enlightenment? Then why am I suddenly seeing religion everywhere? Is religious domination of my public sphere good or bad? Weren't we a European country? Then why I am not feeling like I'm in Europe anymore? It feels weird. What does this mean? Didn't we already secure the freedom for gay people to be themselves? Then why are there suddenly so many gay people getting beaten up? For such demoralized people, there are not many things they can do. The only thing they can do is hold on to their own childhood indoctrination with political correctness. Tolerance. We should be tolerant, because according to the ideology of political correctness, tolerance is the highest virtue. Forget about honesty and courage and strength and all these classical virtues. Tolerance is the way to go. And all this also leads to cognitive dissonance. People can clearly see how their country is changing. And they know that this is actually happening. They know that this is real. But then they've been taught at school to be tolerant. And the media continuously tells them that what they're seeing isn't true. And that it isn't just not a problem, but even something good. It's diversity, it's beautiful. And speaking honestly about what's happening to their country isn't even a part of the acceptable narrative. Having a negative opinion about it is even considered to be some kind of disease, xenophobia or Islamophobia. So people know and feel that something is wrong and that the way their oikos is being destroyed doesn't make any sense. But on the other hand, they don't want to be xenophobic, so they tell themselves that there isn't any problem. This is cognitive dissonance, which is the mental discomfort experienced by a person who simultaneously holds two or more contradictory beliefs, ideas, or values. What we're seeing here is entire European populations with cognitive dissonance in their own countries, which were passed on to them by their own forefathers. You can also wonder what it would have done to the ancient Greeks if their government had suddenly decided that their civilization had to become multicultural. What would have happened to the ancient Greeks if their oikos was getting ruined with Chinese buildings and Chinese symbolism? Do you think that the ancient Greeks would have accepted this? Do you think that they would have decided to be tolerant? I think it probably would have led to massive violence against their own government and the Chinese newcomers. And what do you think would happen if the current government of Egypt were to decide that the country needed to become multicultural, allowing 1 million Russian Christians to migrate to Egypt, changing the Egyptian oikos with churches and Christian symbolism and sounds? It would probably lead to massive violence.
رجع الامور لنصابها والا هتلاقي الجموع دي كلها هتفجر مصر. انت اللي بتعمل حرب اهليه بين مصر بين المسلمين وغير المسلمين.
Now, I'm absolutely not saying that I support any kind of violence, but I do think that the current trend is highly dangerous. Even though entire populations are indoctrinated with political correctness, believing that tolerance is the highest virtue, there's going to be a certain point when people won't accept this anymore. I think this process has already started, and it is getting worse every year. This doesn't mean that people are xenophobic, racist, or that there's anything wrong with them. People generally love to travel and explore parts of the world that they don't know, and experience the culture, taste the food, and listen to the music. But people also want a safe and familiar home environment that they can feel home in, an oikos. Every people has the right to a place they call home. People might want to visit Marrakesh, but that doesn't mean that they want their own home environment to turn into Marrakesh. If this were to happen, people will want to move away from it. You can already see so-called white flight happening in certain neighborhoods in the UK and in the Netherlands. Native Dutch people do not want to live in the Schilderswijk or Amsterdam New West anymore. And there is nothing wrong with this. People simply want to live in an environment that makes them feel at home. They want their familiar oikos. A fun example of something similar is when former leader of the Dutch Green Party, Femke Halsema, took her children off a school that had too many Muslim pupils. Even the most strident politically correct theocrats want themselves and their children to live and grow up in their own oikos. People with decent salaries move away from the Islamic neighborhoods and prefer to go live in neighborhoods where they can't hear any Islamic call to prayers and don't have to see any Islamic symbolism. But will this still be possible in 10 to 20 years if current trends continue? Every people needs an oikos. Let's hope for radical political change and gradual de-Islamization starting a few years from now. This is Paul from debatetheleft.com. If you like the content, please subscribe or consider supporting this channel through Patreon. And never stop debating the left on Islam. Thanks for watching and take care.